Thank you very much. Thank you, Shane. Good to see you up there, mate. Um, Thanks to Dave for asking me to share, and for making me currently properly nervous. Thanks, Dave. Um, doesn't matter how many of these I do, I still get just that feeling, especially when you've done the readings at the beginning, and then there's just that line at the end. You just say Shane in your script with that, and then my heart goes. Ugh. But anyway, thank you to the committee for putting this meeting together. Thanks to everyone who's in the room. Big shout out to everyone who's in the room. I'm sorry you're going to have to listen to my voice on a screen. Um, but hopefully I'll do my absolute best for you and keep you interested. I'll try at least. I can't promise anything. And yeah, thanks to everyone who's gone before me, and meant that I'm here to tell the story that I'm about to tell. Thanks to everyone who stuck around to be able to pass this message on, so that I was able to get it and be here to tell you tonight. So that's the thank yous out the way. Nice one. I'd like to just start with a moment's silence, if we can, please, for the addict who's going to die tonight. Thank you. Thank you. I'll leave it there. Um, The reason I really, really wanted to start with that, a couple of reasons, is because I get nervous and it's quite nice for me to just be able to center myself like that, but also for a lot less of a selfish reason, but to remind us why we're here, because it's quite easy to forget, and I forget on a daily, if not a minute by minute basis, I forget why I'm here. I see Ash there and I think, oh, get in, it's nice to see Ash, and I see familiar faces. I see John, hello, mate, good to see you there. Um, and I forget, and I start to feel like it's a bit of a social club, or I start to hear people talking and before, and they're talking about the darts and the football and the whatever, and I think, oh yeah, and again my mind drifts a little bit, and I forget that I first came here because I was absolutely desperate, I was broken, and I was ready to commit suicide. Um, I was planning how to do it. It wasn't going to be a cry for help. It was going to be a mess. It wasn't going to be a mess for me. It was going to be a mess for the people who found me. And I was going to make sure that I didn't have to cope with this head anymore. That was my plan, um, until I got put in touch with this program. I didn't get it at first. And my name is, I haven't even said, but my name is Scott. I'm a very grateful recovered addict today, and I'm very happy to be able to say that. But um, it certainly wasn't a coming in and getting this, picking it up and running with it, and all of a sudden now I'm clean and sober. That isn't my story, and not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily relapse as part of my early story, because I never really got recovered. I never had any recovery. I just changed my pattern of using for a little while. Um, I certainly didn't have any recovery. I didn't feel any peace. I didn't have any serenity in my life. Um, but for a brief time, I was familiar with the steps, and I was familiar with the rooms, and I was familiar with you lot, you crazy lot, and I, would come into the rooms and I would get resentful of you all, and then I would use in the bathroom, and then I would come back into the meeting. I would share a load of crap, and then I would go back into the bathroom and use again, and then I would leave and I would lie to my then girlfriend, and I would tell her this program was only supposed to stop me from using, that I was still actually allowed to drink. Um, so I lied to her, told her that I wasn't using anymore, but I was still drinking, and we would drink regularly together. And unbeknownst to her, I was still using. And I'm sure that a lot of people know in this room that it's a very painful experience to be sat in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous with a head full of recovery and a body full of cocaine. Um, what a difficult place that is to be, what a horrific place that is to be, and I feel for anybody who's in that position because I certainly was for a little while. It wasn't until a Frenchman with a handlebar mustache sat next to me in a park, and he said, "How are you?" And it was a call that of one of many calls that my girlfriend and I made desperately, along with the Samaritans and various other people, Change Grow Live and all these kind of drug services and doctors. And I was on antidepressants at the time, and we made a bunch of fucking calls. And eventually, this guy said he would meet me in a park. I'm from the Northeast, but I live in London, and he would meet me in this park in London. And I was just that desperate. I thought, why not? I've got nothing to lose. I'm planning to kill myself. So yeah, I can go to a park and yeah, I can sit next to this guy. And I got there, and like I say, he was a French guy with a white handlebar mustache. He was called Jean-Pierre. Um, and I looked at him and I saw all the differences and none of the similarities. And he sat next to me and he said, I think all he said was, "How are you?" And 20 minutes later, when I'd like poured my guts out to this man, even though I didn't know who he was, desperate. I'm just completely full of self. So I'm just like aching for an opportunity to tell someone how bad my life is. And I'm like, yeah, terrible. And I'm crying. I'm telling this man. And eventually there was a pause because I ran out of things to say. And I looked to me right and he was laughing. And I just remember thinking, you cheeky bastard, do you know who I think I am? Like, how dare you laugh at me? I'm in pain over here. And I sort of said to him, what? Like, what you laughing at? And he said, yeah. He said, you sound like one of us. I had no idea at that point that what that meant was welcome home. That what that meant was there is a solution for you. That what that meant was the solution is in this book. I had no idea that what he was saying to me was that I didn't have some rare mixture of ADHD, depression, anxiety, OCD. I wasn't special. I wasn't different. All I was a drug addict and I was an alcoholic. And that complete litany of problems that I thought I had that applied to me and just me, it turns out they weren't so special, they weren't so rare. And actually, there was a very, very simple solution for me in this beautiful book. I didn't know that then. But I know that now. And I'm so, so grateful that I found that man because on that day as well, he passed me a Sainsbury's bag, and in the Sainsbury's bag it had every piece of CA literature. It had all the leaflets, it had a big book, it had this very big book. He just passed them to me. And again, I didn't realize at the time, but he was passing me a lifeline. It was as if I was sinking and that man threw me a life raft, and he said, grab onto that, and I had no idea. And I think I took the bag off him and I looked inside and I thought, you can't fucking sell any of this. And I thought, oh, never mind, you know. It sat on my shelf for several months. Do you know what I mean? And I probably didn't use it, didn't look at it. But eventually, actually, that brings me to this bit that I'm going to read from the book, and um, it's on page 316. It says, "No one who drank or used as I did wakes up on the edge of the abyss one morning and says, 'Things look pretty scary. I think I'd better stop drinking or using before I fall in.' I was convinced I could go as far as I wanted and then climb back out when it wasn't fun anymore. What happened was I found myself at the bottom of the canyon thinking I'd never see the sun again. CA and AA didn't pull me out of that hole. And this was such an important point that I didn't know at the time, right? I know this is true today. CA didn't pull me out of this hole, and CA is not going to pull anyone out of a hole. But what it did was it gave me the tools to construct a ladder using the 12 steps, right? Which reminds me of an old story, and I love this one, but there's the story of the guy who finds himself in the bottom of a hole, right? Finds himself stuck in the bottom of this deep hole, and he's screaming and he's shouting and he wants to get out, and he doesn't know what to do. He's trying to climb up. His fingernails are all bloody. He's trying to climb out the hole, and he can't do it. And then luckily he hears a man walking past, and he shouts, "Oi, hey, yo, and this guy looks down and it's a doctor. And he thinks, oh, I'm saved. And he says to the doctor, Doctor, I need to get out of this hole. Please help me get out of this hole. So the doctor writes him a prescription, throws it down, and walks away. And the man's like, what the fuck? Then another man walks past. He's, oh, quick, help, help, help. And the other man's a priest. And then the priest walks past and he walks up to the hole, looks down. He says, oh, okay, great, good stuff. I'm sorry that you're down there. He says a quick prayer, Sancto Domini, thank you. And then he walks away. And the man's like, what the hell? I'm still stuck in this hole. What the hell's happening here? And then a third man walks past, and the third man is a member of CA. The third man's been through the 12 steps and he's a recovered drug addict. And the third man comes past and he looks down into the hole, and the man says, I'm stuck, I can't get out. And the third man jumps down and lands in the hole next to the man. And the man says, what the fuck are you doing now? We're both down here. And the man from CA turns and says, yeah, but I've been in this hole before. I know how to get out. And that is what this fellowship is all about. That is what this fellowship did for me. It's not going to tell me, it's not going to do for me what I won't do for myself. It will help me to construct a ladder. It will give me the tools. Yeah. So eventually, I'm going to tell you briefly about me and about what happened to me before I came to CA. But briefly, in a nutshell, like I say, my life was shit. I was 33 years old, and my girlfriend at the time kicked me out. And she sent me back to the northeast, and I was living in my dad's spare bedroom, and everything was absolute shit. I had nothing. I had nothing to show for it. I didn't lose much in my addiction because I didn't gain anything. I didn't have a house to lose. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have, a job at the time. I had nothing. I had a handful of qualifications, but other than that, I hadn't gained anything. So I found myself back in my dad's spare room, 33 years old, and I'm looking around at nothing. And all I've got is two dealers that are in the northeast. I've been there 10 minutes, two dealers that I've managed to find, and I'm smashing a load of gear. I'm on page 56 of Pornhub, and everything's just bleak and everything's grim, right? So I get a phone call from my sponsor at the time. My sponsor at the time is what is referred to in the 12 and 12 as a low bottom drunk, right? Low bottom, like crack and heroin addict, like real kind of like low bottom. And he managed to get himself clean, managed to get himself sober, and he had decades of sobriety, right? I looked up to this man so much. I looked up to him primarily because the first meeting I met him in, he said, my name is Tony, I'm a recovered addict, and I brushed my teeth today. That's what he said. And I was like, fucking hell, you must be a genius. I'm going to follow that man to the ends of the earth. So this guy calls me up and he says, Scott, it's not working. I can't sponsor you anymore. You're not helping me and I'm not helping you. He said, so I'm afraid this is the end of the line. Again, this is another man that I also owe my life to because that's the kindest thing he could have done to me because I wasn't listening, I wasn't paying attention, and I wasn't doing the stuff he asked me to do. And I thought the world had collapsed. Things were bad before, and then all of a sudden this guy won't even help me. But he said, "But I've done something. I've rang the CA helpline, and I've got hold of this guy. He's 26. He's a plumber from Newcastle, and he's 9 months clean and sober from crack, and he's going to give you a ring." I thought, "Oh, Jesus." Who's this lad? Who's this guy going to call me? I don't need some 26-year-old plumber. I need a doctor. I'm special. Um, Unbeknownst to me, that man was going to become my best friend in the whole world. He's still my sponsor today, the guy who I love like he's family. That man's, again, another man who has saved my life. But he didn't take any shit, and he called me up and he said, "Are you willing to go to any lengths to get clean and sober?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you done once and for all?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "And are you willing to pass this on once I've passed it to you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, the important thing to know now is that I'm not going to show you how to get clean and sober. I'm going to show you how to give clean and sober. Your problem is that you are selfish, you are self-centered. So if you're walking into the meetings thinking, what can I get out of the meeting? Your thought process is wrong. Your thinking is off. You need to be walking into a meeting thinking, what can I bring to the meeting? How can I help people in the meeting? So in a sense, what I'm now going to do is train you to be a sponsor. So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So what do I need to do? good friend of ours, James H. He's a very eloquent man who he said to me, "This isn't the fucking magic circle. So tell me what you did. I'm sat here dying, of addiction, and I'm like, all right, but what did you do? So many shares I listen to, and I'm like, they skip this next bit. They go, I did some stuff, and then and I'm like, but what was the stuff? Um, so here's the stuff. So the stuff that I did, he said to me, I need you to pray. First thing you do when you wake up. He said, when you've been asleep, your addiction's been in the corner doing press ups. So you need to put something between it and you when you wake up. So that thing is going to be God. The first thing you're going to do, it's called the AA roll, apparently. I thought that was something you could get from Greg's, but you roll out of bed, straight out of bed, onto your knees, and you do the serenity prayer. Then you're going to do the step 3 and step 7 prayer. I said, I don't know those, but bing, bing, and he sent them through to my phone. So he said, just read them off your phone. I said, okay, yeah, fair enough. On my knees, yeah. He said, yeah, on your knees. I said, right. And then he said, I want you to do a prayer of your choice. Don't pray for yourself because you're a selfish bastard, so pray for other people. I said, okay, great. So prayer, meditation, I want you to do 10 minutes meditation. He told me to do 10 minutes. He said, don't do 9, don't do 11, do 10. He said, I'm trying to teach you some accountability. I'm trying to teach you to be organized. I'm trying to teach you to follow instructions, essentially. And I'm trying to teach you to, I didn't realize this at the time. This 26-year-old lad, he was teaching me how to be a man. He was teaching me how to function in society. He was teaching me how to live as a human and to be a successful person. So prayer, meditation. I want you to write a gratitude list. Write 10 things you're grateful for and 5 things that you're grateful that you're no longer doing. So that was easy for me. I'm grateful I'm not in a cell. I'm grateful I'm not in a hospital. I'm grateful I'm not on bail. I'm grateful, I'm not scrabbling around on the floor for bits of gear. I'm not throwing up on myself in the shower. I'm grateful I'm not, um, you know, waking up random places I don't know. All those things. I'm grateful I'm not doing any of that right now. Right. However, he did say to me, all this is borrowed, right? You stop doing this stuff, you give it straight back. Yeah. So, you're not doing it now. That's why we mentioned it being a daily reprieve, right? So he said, prayer, meditation, grat list. Then I need you to read 2 pages of this beautiful big book. He told me to start at the first 2 pages, then the next day read the next two, the next day read the next two, and eventually I'll have been through the whole book. So I said, okay. Something I didn't realize at the time as well is that I kept on saying, what's next? So I kept on saying, all right, great, what's next? Um, And again, I didn't realize at the time, but that mindset and that kind of desperation, I suppose, was truly a gift. It was the gift of desperation. And I was just saying, okay, what's next? Yeah, what's next? Yeah, what's next? And every time he asked me to do something, I'd call him up. I'm sure I annoyed him in the early days. I'd call him up and say, I've done it. What's next? I've done it. What's next? I've done it. Um, prayer, meditation, grat list, 2 pages. He said, call me at a very specific time, not a minute before, not a minute after. I want to just stress as well. There's some of these things that we don't do now, and there are some of these things that several years in, as I am now, I don't do every day. Calling him every day, for example, we don't do. We have a FaceTime catch up maybe once a week. There are certain things that you know, going to a meeting, for example. He told me to get on a meeting every single day. I don't do that anymore. This is a bridge to normal living. So I want to be able to live normally, right? So I don't do a meeting every day anymore, right? At the beginning, I worked what was very much a fear-based program. I was shit scared of relapsing, and I was shit scared of dying, and I was shit scared that all the stuff that I was borrowed was going to go back. Right? Something I will say, it's taken me, like I say, several years to evolve this mindset. Is that got me clean? That separated me from drinking drugs. What I'm now pursuing is the spiritual aspect, and I'm pursuing a spiritual life, and I'm trying to further and enlarge upon my spiritual life. The book says that it is meant to be suggestive only. So I don't take everything in there these days as gospel, right? But I do take a lot of that in there as things that I can elaborate on and I can explore and I can look into and I can develop. Yeah. Um, However, I will caveat all of that by saying early in my recovery, I treat this like it was absolute gospel and I needed to follow every single word to the letter, right? I treat what my sponsor said as gospel. I needed to follow every single word to the letter, and I did that for several years. That got me clean and sober. Yeah, that's what I needed at the time. All right. But like I say, as my recovery has evolved, I have realized that pursuing and enlarging upon a spiritual life looks different for everybody, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. Um, for example, I go around to the Buddhist temple every now and again and I meditate around there. All right. I have been known to go to church. Sometimes I will do that. Um, I read spiritual literature. I love Hermann Hesse, anything written by Hermann Hesse. If you haven't read Siddhartha, I would really recommend that you read the book Siddhartha. It's only a small one, but it's the most beautiful thing I've ever read. Following that, if you want to read Narcissus and Goldmund by Hermann Hesse, another beautifully spiritual book and books that have contributed greatly to my spiritual life and enlarging upon my spiritual life. Something that it says in the book is essential for long-term sobriety, right? And when I'm saying sobriety there, I don't just mean it in the sense of free from alcohol. I mean the second meaning, which also means to be sober-minded, all right? To be calm, to be peaceful, to be serene. Yeah. I know I've gone off on a tangent here a little bit, but yeah, I'm not going to do that just yet, but I will finish my daily routine. So he told me to pray, meditate, gratitude list, read 2 pages of the big book, call him on time. He told me to call two newcomers. He said, call two newcomers and ask how they are. Don't make it about you. Don't offload your shit onto them. This will help with the selfishness, which is my problem. He then told me to get on a meeting at night to take newcomers' numbers so that I could call them the next day. Um, and he told me to meditate and then pray before bed and thank God for a clean and sober day. That was my daily routine, and I did that, and I do most of that still. Did that to the letter for several years. Um, a point that I really would love to get across is that I understood this stuff, and this stuff started to work for me and in my life when I applied earnestness. There's a difference between praying and praying earnestly. There's a difference between meditating and meditating earnestly. By earnest, I mean wanting it. I was told this isn't a program for people who need it. This is a program for people who want it, right? And when I came in, I needed it. But now I want this with all my heart. I've also heard people say, and this is their journey, if I could drink and use successfully today, I would. Yeah, I would still be you drinking and using successfully today, but I can't. That's not my story. I have an allergy. When I put one in, so if I could, that's not my story. If I could drink and use successfully, literally, if you offered me a button and you said you can press that button and that will make you'd be able to drink and use successfully, I wouldn't press it. I do not want, in my opinion, first of all, there's no such thing as successful using. Let's just get that out the way. Yeah. Successful, happy people don't use drugs, right? Let's just get that out the way, right? And as for drinking, what, some capitalist ideal that we need to be drinking alcohol with every meal? There's a reason they put the wine list down first. It's because they make more money off wine. Yeah. There's a reason they want to sell you beer because it's addictive and because the government gets a shitload of tax, right? So why am I impregnated with the idea that because I'm from the Northeast and everyone else drinks, that I have to drink? Like, that I'm the abnormal one. Do you know what? Like, I feel happy, joyous, and free about the fact that I will never have to drink and use again. That gives me so much peace. And also the fact that I don't want to. Even if you offered me the successful version, which again I don't think exists. If you offered me the successful version, I mean, alcohol's poison at the end of the day. Why do I want to poison myself every Friday night? If I could avoid it, I'll have a Coke Zero and I'll sit at home with my cat and my wife. By the way, that girl who kicked me out, eventually, when I got to 6 months clean and sober, I called her mother and I said, "Can I ask your daughter to marry me?" She said, "Fuck off." And she said, "Call me back when you get to a year clean and sober." So I got to a year clean and sober and I called her back and I said, "Can I ask your daughter to marry me?" She said, "Yes." Um, so we're now married and we've been happily married for a little while and we're trying for a baby. it what I'm saying is step 12 says having had a spiritual awakening, right? So I'm going to tell you, I have had a spiritual awakening, not as a result of sitting in meetings, but as a result of going through the steps. I've heard a beautiful phrase, which is, I can sit in a chicken coop for 1,000 days. It doesn't make me a chicken, right? I can sit in meetings for 1,000 days. It doesn't make me recovered. Yeah. I've had a spiritual awakening, like it says in black and white on step 12. I've had a spiritual awakening as going through the steps, as a result of going through the steps. What is a spiritual awakening? A spiritual awakening is a personality change sufficient enough to bring about recovery, right? So again, this stuff landed for me when I realized that I couldn't come in here and be the same person. I couldn't come in here and be resentful and be macho and be like, fuck this, fuck that, yeah, I'll look at this. I couldn't come in and be that arrogant, selfish. I needed to come in here and have love for every single one of you. I needed to come in here and catch my thinking and catch myself and go, I shouldn't be thinking that. I shouldn't be being resentful about her or about him. I shouldn't be thinking he's a twat. I shouldn't be wanting his share to end because he's annoying me. You know, like I shouldn't be doing that. And if I want to stay clean and sober, my personality has to change. I have to have love in my heart. I have to have respect. I have to have kindness. I have to be open-minded. These are the principles that we have to live our lives by. If we don't, one of two things is going to happen. We're going to relapse or we're just going to be miserable in recovery. Both of those things can end in death. I don't want that. I want to be in these rooms. I want to be with you crazy fuckers, but I want to be really happy about it as well. I want to be able to say that I have love in my heart for every single one of you, and I want to feel spiritually connected. I want to feel connected to God. I want to open the door for someone and let them through. I want to stop the car and let that person out. I want to say please and thank you. I want to say God bless you when I put the phone down and mean it. Yeah. I think that was the main point I wanted to get across tonight. And if I can do that, then I think I've been successful. Um, that it was a personality change that had to happen. And it hasn't happened straight away, you know. It mentions in the book the educational variety, right? I think I'm one of them. I'm learning more as I go and I'm correcting my behaviors as they happen. When they crop up, I do a step 10. You know, when these things happen, when they crop up, because they still do, I'm not a saint. Yeah. When they happen, I am earnest about it. I am like, and I want to change. I look at my nightly review the next day as part of my morning routine and I go, what was wrong yesterday? Oh, yeah, I was too selfish. Or, oh my God, yeah, I was dishonest. Right, okay. And I will change, I will try my fucking best to change it the next day. You know, if you could truly say that you've lived each day like that, if I could truly say I've lived each day like that, then I think I'm doing all right. Um, and hopefully I'll still be here in another 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, who knows? Um, I think that's my time, probably. Ash, am I good? Um, I think I probably am. So I'm going to leave it there. But I genuinely hope that you've got something out of this, and I really hope that um, yeah, that I've made some sense. If you're struggling, or even if you're not, if you're in your first 30 days, last 30 days, do the stuff, do the work, use the tools. We all know fellows who died recently from this, right? Um, several funerals. I've had three fellows this year. Sponsee of mine, I just lost a sponsee of mine a couple of weeks ago. He was 26 actually as well. 26. He was a trauma nurse and he was getting his shit together. He went back home. He was going to rehab. Everything was looking all right. We were on step 4 and then he went missing. And if you've been a sponsor, you know that happens, but you just hope and pray that it's not what it was. I got a phone call from his brother, you know. It's serious stuff, but it doesn't have to be hard. Um, Yeah. Come and join us. Be happy, joyous, and free. You never have to drink news again. I'll post my number in the chat. Please reach out, and I mean that. I'm really, really happy to talk. Yeah, and I'll leave it there. Thanks again, everyone, for the meeting. Thanks for asking me to share. God bless. Have a lovely night. Thank you.